Hey guys, what's up, it's Zyflin here, and in today's video we're going to be going over the top 13 melee weapons in Warframe. Now, this is in no particular order, and different weapons are going to be better or worse versus different enemies and in different circumstances and stuff like that. So you're always going to be able to make something a little bit more optimal than what I'm showing in today's video, depending on the type of content that you're playing. And I've kind of grouped these weapons into categories as well, so you can see that I'm holding the Arca Titron. We're going to be talking about other hammer slammy weapons. We're also going to be talking about glaives, Incarnon weapons, and a few other things. So let's go ahead and get right into the content. First up, we have a melee influence Arca Titron build. Now, the reason that we're able to run melee influence is because of the unique trait of the Arca Titron. So slam attacks apply electricity status effect. We also got a little bit more electric damage on here with shock and touch too. And we want weeping ones on here, so we are applying those electric status effects as often as possible. Seismic wave to do the big old slam. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cast speed. I'm going to hit the enemies just a little bit to build up a little bit of combo. Then I'm going to jump, slam, and you can see all those status effects just killing all the bad guys. So in terms of time to kill and number of kills, the Arca Titron is pretty busted. So next up we have the Fragor Prime, and this is the build that I'm running. Now this isn't a slam build, this is more of a VIP killer build. You can go ahead and drop Shock and Touch and throw on Northwind for some viral instead of the corrosive, but because I'm testing versus the heavy gunners, we're running corrosive. And all you want to do with this is run into the enemies, hit them just a little bit, and then you can go ahead and use that heavy attack to deal a lot of damage to the enemies. Now, of course, the more you hit them, the more combo you build up, the more damage you're going to deal. But this is going to be really good at just taking down those acolytes, for example. You can see that we take away a big portion of the enemy's health bar just by using that slam attack. So we're not killing extremely fast like a large group like the Arca Titron, but for just focusing on one target and getting that target dead, this is a really good weapon for that. Next up, we've got the Sampotes. Now, this is from the Dagger Paradox, and it's got a unique slam effect, which lets out all these cool waves. So you're going to see that whenever we go ahead and we do a slam attack. So this is another slam attack build specifically for the Sampotes. You can go ahead and swap up the melee arcane if you want, but because we're not running any electric, we're not using melee influence, so keep that in mind. So what you want to do with the Sampotes is run into a group of enemies, build up a little bit of combo, and then whenever you're ready, jump into the air, do a slam attack, and you can see the shockwaves just launching all of the enemies into the air. Now, again, it's not the most damaging, but it's going to kill all those lighter units extremely fast. And of course, the more you just run around and melee, the higher you get your combo, then the more damage you're going to deal. So it's very fun to make just a melee build with this, or a melee lootout with this, and just basically kill everything in the room by slamming this cool shockwave attack and just watching all the enemies fly around. Make sure to be doing the finisher kills on the enemies so you can keep your combo count as high as possible if you're using melee crescendo, by the way. Here's with a 12-time combo, you can see all the red crits and just the enemies flying about the place. Next up, we've got the Rakta Dark Dagger. Now, this thing has a lot of passive bonuses. You get this from the Red Veil at the final rank, and whenever you deal damage to enemies affected by radiation, it's going to restore your shields and grant you overshields. It also has another passive called Mind Haze, so for 30 seconds after you bring the weapon out, the enemies aren't going to be able to spot you, which is good if you don't want to get detected for whatever reason. On this build, we're running radiation and electric, so we can take advantage of melee influence. We've got condition overload on here, so we do have to use a primer. I'm using this build on my epitaph for the purpose of this video. Let's go ahead, prime all the enemies, and then whip out our dagger, start melee, and as you can see, all of the rocks are basically spreading and all of the enemies are just dying. This is kind of like your budget dual Ichor Incarnon, I guess you could say. Next up, we're moving on to the Hate Incarnon. So I'm running Swordsman's Flourish, Resolute Force, and Absolute Valor. Here's the build that I'm rocking. I'm running Melee Aminosity for more crit chance on the heavy attacks. And it's kind of just a hybrid build. Again, because we're running Condition Overload on this build, you want to go ahead and prime the enemies. And now you start to melee. And we're dealing a ton of red crits, a ton of slash procs. We go ahead, we heavy attack, turn on the Incarnon mode, and everything is already dead. Very good, very nice. Next up, I'm running the Anku Incarnon. So we've got Edge of Justice on Evolution 2, Standoff on Evolution 3, and Absolute Valor on Evolution 4. Here's the build that I'm rocking again. Again, it's kind of a hybrid build. Cast an ability for melee exposure. Go ahead, prime the enemies, and now we just start meleeing. Not as good as the Hate, but we can go ahead, heavy attack, turn on that Incarnon form, and we just keep on meleeing, heavy attacking whenever we want to, and all the enemies eventually die. Now we're going to be moving on to the glaives category, kind of. And first up, we have the Cerata. Now, the Cerata isn't the first choice whenever it comes to glaives, because the Xoris and the Glaive Prime are just better, but this is specifically for dealing with high-level corpus enemies. So that is what our build is based around. And that's because it has this innate toxin on the weapon, so it makes it easier to build. So if I go ahead, spawn in these corpus tech enemies, hold down my melee button, and just throw a middle mouse button, everything died in one explosion. Next to that, and probably a more well-known weapon, is the Xoris. Now on the Xoris, I've got 3 different builds. This is a beginner build. You can just drop anything that you don't have. So let's say, for example, you don't have prime pressure point, you can go ahead and use regular pressure point. If you don't have melee influence, you don't need to use that either. You just drop down the mods and the arcanes, the things that you do have, and this build will do just fine. Just try to stay along the same sort of theme. We also have a heavy spam build, so this is the next jump up from the other build that I just showed you guys. And then finally, we have a more optimized build, which looks like this. So you can go for any of these builds, whatever you can put together the easiest. We're going to go ahead, spawn in enemies, hold down our melee attack button, go ahead, middle mouse button. And as you can see, all of the enemies are going to have these electric procs spread amongst them. And this is a weapon that you can get quite early on as a beginner. And these are level 215 steel path modified enemies that we're basically just killing in the space of no time. And last but definitely not least, whenever it comes to the glaives, is the Glaive Prime. This is the build that I'm running on the Glaive Prime. Now, the reason that this weapon is busted is because it forces slash procs on the explosion, and because the explosion deals such high damage, the slash procs that are being dealt to the enemies are dealing a ton of damage as well. So we go ahead, hold melee and then middle mouse button, and as you can see, all of these slash procs are just eating away at the enemy's health, and they're all dying extremely quickly, implying they're hit by the explosion or in the explosion radius. Another Incarnon weapon that we've got is the Magistar Incarnon. Now I'm running the Edge of Justice on Evo 2, Swift Break on Evo 3, and Critical Parallel on Evo 4. For just a standard melee build, I'm running this build right here. But it's worth noting you can also use this as a stat stick for the likes of Excalibur, and the build for a stat stick Magistar Incarnon would look like this. But I'm going to be demonstrating versus enemies with this Tennokai build that I've got. We're going to go ahead melee to build up our Tennokai and our combo, and you just keep on meleeing, and you're basically beating all the enemies around like you have a baseball bat. Now, it's not the most damaging right now because we haven't primed the enemies, but if we go ahead and we prime them a little bit, you can see that we start to deal way more damage. We can turn on the Incarnon mode. We've already got it on, and then we can make use of the Tennokai procs and stuff like that, and we deal a ton more damage. The only downside with some of these weapons is that if you're not killing the enemies, let's say they're heavily armored like these heavy gunners, they tend to just fly all around the place like you can see. But it's a good thing that not every single enemy in the game is a heavy gunner or a bombard. So the lighter units that you're playing against are going to die very quickly to these builds that I'm showing, and then these heavier units are going to take just a little bit more damage. But you'll be able to focus on those heavier units because there's going to be far less of them. Next up, we have the Ceramic Dagger Incarnon, who are running Gun and Blade on Evo 2. Adept Reflexes on Evo 3, and Absolute Valor on Evo 4. So I've got a melee influence gas build on here, and I've got an Atlas stat stick build as well. But I'm going to be showing you guys the heavy spam gas build that I've got. We're going to go ahead and start meleeing the enemies, build up the Tennokai and the combo, and then we're going to go ahead middle mouse button, and as you can see, all the enemies are going to die pretty quickly again. Is what I keep on meleeing and keep on spamming that Tennokai, build up the combo, and all the bad guys are gonna die. The idea behind this weapon is actually to spam, because you can see you can let out these projectiles on the heavy attack, and that's gonna do a really good job at spreading those electric status effects and gas status effects. Speaking of spreading status effects, next up we have the dual Ichor Incarnon. On Evo 2, I'm running Ronin's Rush, Evo 3, Resolute Force, and Evo 4, Absolute Valor. Here's the melee influence build that I'm rocking. If I wanted, I could format again and put in some Tennokai in this slot, but I'm just too lazy. And honestly, this isn't a weapon that needs it, because you're killing all the enemies so incredibly fast because of the melee influence that, yeah, look at all these electric procs. Just keep on meleeing, build up that combo, and just start heavy attacking, and everything starts to die. So I'll do that demonstration one more time where I don't let go of any of the buttons. So we just go ahead and we keep on spamming, heavy attack maybe once or twice, And as you can see, all the enemies are literally just dead. And finally, onto my favorite Incarnon weapon, because it just makes things so fast, we have the Praedos. So on the Praedos, on Evo 2, I'm running Drifting Grace for more sprint speed and slide. I'm running Shockwave Synergy, so for each enemy hit by slam radius, gain 4 combo, which is actually going to pair with the stance mod that I've got on. I've got Evolved Ascension, so plus 30% parkour velocity. And Evolution 5, collecting ammo grants 5 melee combo counter. With this weapon, you're able to sustain your combo and go extremely fast basically all the time. So I'm running Sovereign Outcast as my stance. I haven't got the optimal Tennokai mod on, but if I went ahead and form it, I can put a better one in. And this is basically just a hybrid build. I've got Condition Overload in there for damage. You could replace that with Prime Pressure Point if you don't want to prime them. Organ Shatter Blood Rush for crit chance and crit damage. Weeping Wounds for more status. Gladiator Might for more crit damage again. Quickening for more attack speed and more combo count. And I just went ahead and put on Prime Smite Corrupted. And then Prime Reach to kill as many enemies as possible with a single swing. Melee Duplicate as my Arcane. The combo that you want to be doing with the Praedos is you want to be walking forward, holding down the aim button, and then just holding down the melee button to do that slam at the end. And as you can see, just because I have the Praedos equipped, whenever I go ahead and do like a little bullet jump combo, I go way faster. I can actually hear the wind effect in the background because of how fast we're going when we move. Our slide actually makes us go a lot further as well. And it's just a really good weapon for like getting things done quickly, like an exterminate mission or anything that you find sort of like just boring that you want to get done quick. So just because I know some of you guys are going to want to see it, let's go ahead, cast speed and infest the mobility, and let's run around with the Praedos. We go really fast with the Praedos and this combo. I kind of almost fly out of the map whenever I move around with it. But yeah, here's the sprint speed. Let's go ahead and spawn in some enemies. Don't forget to prime them, and then we're going to go ahead and we're just going to keep on meleeing. I think I've got my cat buff at the minute, so that's why all the crits are orange. But as you can see, we shred through all of the enemies extremely quickly. And that's pretty much it for the top 13 melee weapons in Warframe for 2024. If you guys enjoyed the video, go ahead, hit that like button below. If you want to see more content from me, hit subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.